Coming up on this week's episode of Shadow Talk, we will be discussing a second wave of NPM supply chain attacks orchestrated by the Shah-Halud worm, the first reported use of AI in a cyber espionage campaign, a new model for taking over IoT devices, and finally, we'll be joined by Rafal Baran, IT security leader and CISO in the reinsurance space, to discuss our 2026 Cyber Threat Predictions Report, where you'll learn our top predictions for next year and Rafal's insights on how to prepare for the evolving threat landscape. I'm Kim, a cyber threat intelligence analyst here at ReliaQuest, as well as the host of Shadow Talk. And back with me again this week is John, another one of our cyber threat intelligence analysts with his strong background in IR, bringing a technical perspective to Shadow Talk. Hey John, how's it going?
It's going very well. Glad to be on another episode.
Good. Glad to be with you again. As always now, seems tradition, I'm going to throw it straight back to you to lead into our first news story.
Yeah, starting off in the news, we have another instance of the NPM supply chain attacks, this time a continuation of the Shah-Halud worm, known as Shah-Halud 2. And specifically, this threat leverages a compromised maintainer account to publish Trojanized versions of legitimate NPM packages that execute credential theft and exfiltrate code during installation. This second wave of attacks from Shah-Halud worm demonstrates how supply chain vulnerabilities, or more specifically, compromised maintainer accounts, remain a critical weak point for organizations. With over 425 compromised software packages that have a combined total of 132 million downloads, this campaign really highlights the widespread risks posed by commercial third-party tools, as shown by how much use these packages have.
Yeah, that's right. There's been a massive exposure of sensitive credentials with this second wave of the attack. I think within just 5 hours, over 25,000 sensitive credentials were exposed, which is huge. And that includes NPM tokens, GitHub personal access tokens, cloud access keys. And the campaign's been targeting packages associated with Zapier, ENS domains, async API, PostHog, and Postman. So in total, there's over 400 packages that have actually been compromised. And the stolen credentials are being used for twofold in this campaign. So first of all, they're being used to propagate Shah-Halud even further to additional packages to steal and expose even more secrets. But beyond that, the attackers also have the ability to start exploiting these credentials to enable follow-on attacks, using them to gain unauthorized access to critical systems, again, steal more sensitive information, which can lead to a risk of them being leveraged for extortion, which obviously amplifies the risks to a lot of organizations. And so where that sensitive data is being stolen, it's going to have severe impacts for any impacted business. Obviously, these extortion campaigns can lead to huge financial losses for those who are affected, but we also now know about the reputational damage that comes with such instances of sensitive data that we see a lot with ransomware campaigns, and then the legal liabilities that arise from a data breach and any associated fines there as well.
And for any organizations looking to defend themselves, there's a few key recommendations here. First one is going to be to quickly review production code for the use of the compromised packages. If you're a Gray Matter customer, we have a list of those packages in our intelligence update within the platform. Secondly, make sure you rotate any GitHub, NPM, or cloud credentials very quickly, and specifically the ones related to the technologies Zapier, ENS domains, async API, PostHog, and Postman. And this will help prevent the use of those follow-on attacks using those credentials. And then finally, check your organization as well as your employees' GitHub accounts for any new repositories with the description Shah-1 the Second Coming, as this is where the threat actors are publicly posting the stolen credentials quickly after they compromise and exfiltrate them.
Very good. So moving on to the next story. This one hit the headlines a couple of weeks ago now, but it fits in nicely with one of the predictions that we're going to be discussing in our report later on in the episode, which is why we thought we'd bring it up now. But I'm sure many people will have seen that Chinese attackers used Anthropic's AI tool named Claude to automate their espionage operations, targeting about 30 organizations globally. And those targeted included technology companies, financial institutions, manufacturers, and even some government agencies. Now, the Anthropic researchers said that this marks the first documented case of agentic AI successfully obtaining access to confirmed high-value targets for intelligence collection. And I think maybe we could add a couple of nuances in there, that it's the first case of agentic AI being used in these successful campaigns, because humans were still needed to execute this attack. Humans were selecting the targets of the attack, but they reported that AI carried out up to 90% of the operation independently, which is quite interesting. It was able to scan systems, steal data, generate custom exploit code, and all at the speed that's going to far outpace what a human can do. So making thousands of requests per second, no human attacker is going to be able to match that, which obviously raises the stakes for organizations. In this instance, the attackers were only successful in a small number of instances, but I think this is a good sign maybe of what's to come, or a kind of warning shot that if AI-driven attacks do evolve and do become more mainstream and they begin to target maybe smaller, less prepared organizations, then we might see that rate of success really increasing.
Yeah, this is a very interesting story. And I think one of the key points to call out here is that the AI was generating the custom exploitation code based off of what it was able to scan. Definitely a worrying trend that ties into a prediction we'll cover around AI coming up later. But this incident is a wake-up call for organizations to strengthen cybersecurity defenses. Specifically, as these AI threats are escalating, it's important for us to bolster our defenses now. Measures like robust monitoring, automated containment and response actions, and proactive threat intelligence will be critical as AI becomes a standard tool for cyber criminals. Finally, in the news, we have a story around IoT devices that are open to silent takeover, specifically from their cloud management platforms. Researchers have uncovered a new method to breach IoT devices through their cloud management platforms, bypassing traditional safeguards like firewalls and patching. And this exposes organizations to silent takeovers, even for devices that are not directly connected to the internet. A critical thing here is that weak authentication, specifically with how those IoT devices authenticate to their cloud management platforms, is a critical risk, as attackers are exploiting the use of static identifiers, things like device serial numbers and MAC addresses that are often used for device authentication. And these identifiers are easy to access or brute force, allowing hackers to impersonate the devices and take control through those cloud services. A key piece of this is that the attack is difficult to detect and trace. Once compromised, attackers use the cloud platform to send legitimate-looking commands to these devices, making their activity almost impossible to distinguish from normal operations. And this creates significant risks for organizations, including potential operational disruptions and the potential for undetected breaches.
Yeah, I think I would just add to that. You've covered it really well, but the discovery of this technique highlights the need for IoT manufacturers to really improve authentication methods, maybe using randomized credentials instead of predictable identifiers. And we also, as organizations in the community, need to ensure that vendors are enhancing the security measures as well. It's not just on them. There needs to be some pressure from those people that are purchasing these devices and being able to monitor the cloud management channels much more rigorously. I'm keen to know from those people listening at home, how have cloud-based risks affected you and your business? Have they, or have you not started to see it yet? Share your insights with us in the comments on our YouTube channel or by emailing us at ReliaQuest@shadowtalk.com.
Shadow Talk is brought to you by ReliaQuest, the global leader in AI cybersecurity. ReliaQuest helps enterprise cybersecurity teams contain threats in minutes with its agentic AI security operations platform, Grey Matter. ReliaQuest makes security possible for the most trusted enterprise brands in the world. Learn more at ReliaQuest.com.
Joining us now to discuss our latest threat report is Rafal Baran, an IT security leader and CISO in the global reinsurance space. Rafal focuses on building practical security and privacy programs across multiple jurisdictions, with an emphasis on cloud security and incident readiness. He advises senior leadership on emerging risks and resilience and holds boardroom certification as a qualified technology expert, along with multiple credentials spanning cybersecurity, privacy, and the reinsurance domains. Outside his role, Rafal mentors upcoming security professionals and contributes to the wider security community. Welcome, Rafal. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really looking forward to this conversation with you.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. So today we're going to be diving into ReliaQuest 2026 Cyber Threat Prediction Report, which is a comprehensive report analyzing last year's cyber developments and offering predictions for 2026. Three key forecasts stand out, which is going to be the rise of dual-use AI transforming the threat landscape, or legitimate AI being repurposed maliciously, specialized supply chain breaches targeting open source maintainers, and the mounting risk of Chinese IoT devices acting as Trojan horses within critical infrastructure. All very relevant to the news stories we just covered, but let's unpack these insights and explore their implications. So Rafal, opening up to you. Looking back at 2025, how have the key cybersecurity threats evolved, and what lessons can executives learn from recent trends to better prepare for 2026?
Yeah, I don't think we've seen many new threats evolve in 2025. I think it was more about the speed and just acceleration of the existing ones, right? So just a couple examples that you just gave as recent news, but we've seen that throughout the whole year. Ransomware remained as a top threat for most organizations, but we are down to minutes now. It used to be days, used to be hours. Now we are down to minutes. So big lesson over here would be we have to match that speed that we are attacked with the defenses that would prevent these attacks, right? I've been seeing identity being a new attack blast radius. So that's a big one. So service accounts, SaaS tokens have been a case in throughout 2025 as well. But also supply chain. Prior years, we could see multiple of these big SaaS suppliers being hit, and then that further impacting the organizations. This year, it's slightly pivoted from what I've seen. It was the smaller SaaS vendors and code maintainers, right? That was a big impact on the industry. But also that's, well, based on your prediction, that's what's about to continue in 2026. So that's something to get prepared for as well.
Yeah. And on the topic of getting prepared, in your experience, how should cybersecurity executives leverage the intelligence from reports like this predictions report that we've now put out to align their planning for next year with these emerging threats and make those critical business decisions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we have two options over here. We can either treat it as a coffee table or a weekend read, or we can pick a second option, which I'm a big fan of, is use it for 2026 planning. And it's quite timely with the report right now because most organizations go through a prioritization process right now and budgets and resourcing. So I would strongly suggest leveraging the report and asking yourself a question from organization perspective. Can some of these threats happen here, right? Are some of these risks relevant to us? And if so, what do we do to prevent those? Are these risks now addressed on that happy level that we are comfortable with, or should we be implementing more processes to address that? And then if so, that would further feed in that prioritization. Then there is budget discussion. And then maybe in the end, you end up with, hey, maybe we need more resources, or maybe there is a tool needed, or maybe some type of new service. That's what I would suggest using the port for. Also, I would strongly suggest whatever the organization would land on from this position, we have to be able to track it going forward. So creating some form of KPIs, right? So let's say we want to that speed comment before, if we want to decrease the speed to contain and react and respond to these incidents, how do we track it, right? I would suggest working with the SOC provider and seeing, hey, can we see the trend line going down, or how do we stack up against peers and against the industry? And in some cases, it will be available and it will be easier than the other ones. But I would strongly suggest tracking it just so it's measurable and can be provided to the management as well.
Those are really good call outs. I think we produce these reports because we're trying to help, all of our customers in multiple sectors, in multiple regions. But what you said there about being able to translate it into what's going to affect your business and how you can make changes based on that and how to track those changes as well, I think is a really good call out, because if you don't know what impact the changes you've made had, then it's hard to then justify it next time around, isn't it?
No, exactly. Yeah. And even with working with boards, with senior management right now around funding, if you have measurable outcomes and you are able to evidence that and stack it against industry trends, it's just the full picture looks significantly better than just coming to the senior leadership and just asking for a particular new tool. I don't think it's about tooling right now. I think it's about just measurable outcomes and tuning this tooling and having proper processes in place to address the current risks.
Yeah, definitely. So diving into some of the predictions we made in the report there, we had a prediction of threat actors operationalizing AI-powered pen testing tools. With that in mind, what advice would you have for enterprises to adapt their security postures to address this shift and maybe implement autonomous machine speed security measures? What's your take on that?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I absolutely love the idea behind the technology that we are able to run these AI pen tests right now. And as the report mentions, it can be used by the bad guys, and we have more risk exposure right now. But in my opinion, there are a couple ways that we could prepare for this. Well, first of all, and probably very obvious, we could just run it first, right? And get prepared, see on the perimeter where the issues are. And by leveraging this technology, we can first run these pen tests quicker and probably more accurate. And the scope may significantly increase in many cases. So I would suggest potentially considering running that and seeing, do we have a lot to fix, and then fixing that, right? So that would be a very first way to address that. So we have the perimeter secured now. Then there would come the automation, once again, working with your SOC provider and automating the workflows to whatever level you're comfortable with, right? But trying to mitigate the bottlenecks. Sometimes there will be approval needed. Sometimes there will be manual step that may not be necessary, right? So token revocation and similar, resets, you want to have done automatically based on certain triggers. So I think paying a lot of attention to that automation is a very good idea. And then the last one over here would be the identity resilience. So leveraging your zero trust, which hopefully in many organizations already is up and running and in a perfect state. And like segmentation and list privilege, making sure that that's done and tested, and you can rely on your IAM structures. So if you implement all three, then if you think you've got perimeter down, then if attackers were to get in, you are quick to respond. But then even if that went through, you still are able to contain it quite well within the environment. So I think it's that layered security model that you want to enforce, especially for cases like this. So definitely have to think holistically. Once again, there's not a single process that you could just say, hey, let's deploy this and we are good to go. Probably it's a more complex process than that.
Yeah, definitely. That's something we talk about on Shadow Talk all the time, is having that defense in depth strategy. And you want to stop people getting in, but if you can't stop them, you need to, slow them down and stop them from spreading within the network to contain the threat as quickly and as efficiently as you can.
No, yeah, 100% agree. And also from that perspective, attackers are able now to compress the time to break in. And once again, you have to be able to compress the time to respond. So I can't, stress that enough how important it is. And there are processes and solutions now that provide that functionality. So I would suggest leveraging that heavily.
Absolutely. And we mentioned open source maintainers earlier in the segment. Again, I'd love your advice and your insights on what organizations should do to address that increasing risk of supply chain attacks that we've spoken about, particularly those targeting open source maintainers, to prevent or mitigate any high impact compromises.
Yeah, so supply chain attacks have shifted now from systems to maintainers, and that definitely has been a trend. And if that's to continue, we should tackle it. This one is not too easy to address. There is that staggering stat that you have in the report. There is 7 million open source projects that are maintained by individuals, which is a very obvious attack surface, right? And in many cases, you will not be able to get like a fancy independent auditor 100-page report outlining the security posture of that vendor. So what do you do? Well, I'm a big fan of working closely with your procurement team and your legal team and making sure your contracts are in place and they have all necessary cybersecurity and privacy clauses in place, right? A big thing over here would be a software bill of materials. You want to have this covered. How I'm thinking of that is really no different than an ingredient list on your food label. You want to know what's inside, right? So it's a big thing in visibility. And I think also hardening your CI/CD pipeline may be a good idea. So more of a standard cybersecurity program processes. If you have those in place, that's probably as much you can do right now to address this risk.
I think that's a great call out about having that software ingredient list, especially as a lot of the recommendations we're giving around these NPM breaches is to verify if the compromised dependencies are being used. And that would certainly increase the time defenders are able to remediate any compromised packages rather than having to go look all over the place to confirm if 400 plus different packages are used in our environment. Finally, for you, what steps should executives take to prepare for the potential weaponization of IoT devices by nation-state actors, such as China's strategic exploitation of IoT supply chains for espionage and critical infrastructure disruptions?
Yeah, so nation-state attacks, and I think one of the news stories was talking about some of it as well. I wouldn't necessarily feel safe if I'm not working for government from these attacks. I think that the targets are outside of government as well. So private, public companies should get ready for it as well, right? So with this one, I think the goal of the attack here is slightly different. I don't think the attackers target to turn off the lights for you tomorrow. I think they target to just stay in your environment forever. And that's something that you should consider as well, right? It's just different risks that we are all together dealing with. I would start here with visibility. Having a live inventory for your IoT devices is a fantastic start. It's not what many organizations do, unfortunately. Here, I would definitely stress to have something a little bit more modern than old school CMDB that's updated periodically. I think you want to have something real time and see all your HVAC and cameras being plugged in and see them there real time. Also, I would extend the coverage to your third-party facilities and see the full perimeter and have a possibly as close to 100% coverage as you can. And then network segmentation would be a standard one over here to cover that, right? Again, you limiting the attack radius. Credential rotation, I think it was mentioned earlier, it's a big one, and many of those run on default credentials. So you want to have a process in place to rotate them. And I am a big fan of tabletop exercises, of building that muscle memory. What I would suggest doing over here, and what I see also in many financial organizations are subject to various cybersecurity and privacy regulations around the world. So within like state-based and international ones, and they will stipulate the need. Hey, they say something along, run your tabletop at least annually, right? And I'm of an opinion that in this particular case, it's a great example where we want to go a little bit above and beyond. And maybe having the same vendor running your ransomware tabletop for a 6th year in a row is not addressing the risk as accurately as it did at the very beginning. So maybe having a little bit different audience for this tabletop exercise and having those more focused on the examples like this. So for example, you may take your IT infrastructure and networking and security team and run a very focused tabletop exercise, right? And maybe do it more frequently and do target different groups, or, have it a little bit more complex in some cases. Some cases you may want to choose to involve the board members and executives for a more of a executive level tabletop. Just all depends how you want to structure it. But I'm again, big fan of the building the muscle memory with those. And more you practice, the more prepared you are. And you see the gaps too. You want to be able to address what has been noted as like potential improvement area.
There's some amazing recommendations, and I really love the call out for the tabletop exercises. I can tell you from my experience when I used to train incident response here at ReliaQuest, and we did tabletop exercises, it really starts putting the pieces together. And as you said, showcases those gaps. If someone goes to isolate a host and they realize, oh, we actually can't connect to that host, well, now's the time to remediate it before there's an attack in place. So really, really great call out there. Call to action to our listeners, though. What do you think will be the biggest cybersecurity threats coming up in 2026? Let us know in the comments or via email, shadowtalk@reliaquest.com. In closing, I want to say thank you to Rafael and Kim for joining us today and providing your excellent wisdom. I want to say thank you to our listeners, as always, for sharing your time with us. If you'd like any information to the stories or the predictions report, the links are in the link tree below. And as a final reminder, don't forget to check out our recently deployed YouTube channel if you'd like to listen to this podcast on a different platform.
That's all for this week. Thanks for listening to another episode of Shadow Talk. If you'd like to get in touch, we're just an email away. You can send your questions for us to shadowtalk@reliaquest.com. Please don't forget to subscribe so you can get next week's episode delivered direct to your podcasting platform of choice. And we really appreciate it if you can rate and review Shadow Talk wherever you listen to us. It'll make a huge difference and help us reach new listeners. We'll be back next week with another episode of Shadow Talk, your weekly cybersecurity news and threat research podcast made for practitioners by practitioners.